Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. This is our third panel today of the Beach Read Bash, and there is still one more after this, so hopefully you will join us at 2 o'clock for the bingo game. So I apologize for the folks who have been joining each time and they have to listen to me say the same thing, but I do want to welcome everyone and let you know that today's event is a collaboration between A Mighty Blaze and the Newburyport Literary Festival. My name is Jennifer Entwistle, and I'm the co-director of the Newburyport Lit Fest. We usually hold an in-person festival every April here in Newburyport, Massachusetts, and hopefully we will be able to get back to that next year. So I hope for those of you who are in the area or want to take a trip in April that you'll come to see us.
Yeah.
But before we begin here online, I do want to just mention a couple of housekeeping items. So we are using Zoom webinar, which means that we can't see and hear the audience, but as I see people are in the chat right now, definitely chat away. I do want to mention you might want to check your setting that it says all panelists and attendees, because some folks are only chatting to the panelists, and I think you probably want to say your piece to everybody. So you might want to change that setting. We also are going to use the Q&A button that's at the bottom of your Zoom screen. Please use that to submit questions to the authors. Jenna will be doing some Q&A towards the end of this session, and that's where she'll pull the audience questions from. So please, you can load up your questions throughout the event, but if they're in the chat, we'll lose track of them. So please use the Q&A button. And finally, I'd just like to ask that if you are going to buy books from this event, that you please buy them from an independent bookseller. They really need our support now more than ever. We have a partner bookseller, which is the Bookshop of Beverly Farms, and they have set up a Beach Read Bash page on bookshop.org. So I will be putting the link to that in the chat for everyone. And so, without further ado, let's get started with First Mates. Today's event is going to be moderated by Jenna Payon, who is an author, songwriter, and Cape Codder, currently at work on her first novel. She's also the media and special events producer and on-air host for A Mighty Blaze, an all-volunteer team of writers founded by Jenna Blum and Caroline Levitt to help other writers who are publishing during the time of COVID.
Thank you so much, Jen. And Kerry, can we do a little mic check here?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. All right. All right, great. Thank you so much. Okay, so hello, everyone. Welcome to First Mates. Welcome, authors. It's so amazing to see all four of you. I'm such a big fan of all of yours. I am so excited about your books, and I can't wait to talk about them today. Rather than, again, I'm sorry, and thank you to our some of our attendees. I'm seeing the same names in these sessions. Like, thank you for coming to all of these sessions. This is so cool. We've just been talking. We're going to do this live, hopefully next year in person. This would be so cool. So stay tuned. And without further ado, rather than give your bios, which would take too long, we're going to copy and paste your bios into the chat so everybody can see your amazing accolades. You're also accomplished. It would take far too much time to go through how wonderful you are. So instead, I'm going to focus on your books, and I'm going to just introduce everyone really briefly and then let you tell us about your books. So today we have Jamie Brenner, whose book is Summer Longing. We have the fabulous Jane Green, whose recent book, The Friends We Keep, is now out in paperback. Hi, Jane. We have Meg Mitchell-Moore, whose new book, Two Truths and a Lie, is out now. And we have Kerry Kletter, whose debut novel, East Coast Girls, is out. Your books are all fabulous. Welcome, ladies. Thank you for being here. Thank you. All right, and we're going to go person by person, and we're just going to go in alphabetical order and give us the 30-second elevator pitch on your book. Tell us what it's about. We'll start with you, Jamie. Sorry, B, early in the alphabet.
No, I'm getting used to it. Summer Longing is my second book set in Provincetown, which is my favorite beach community. And my original thought was I was going to write about motherhood. So Provincetown... Summer Longing is about a woman named Ruth Cooperman who arrives on the shores thinking she's going to have her retirement, her me time. It is her time to be selfish. And instead, Within 24 hours of arriving at her perfect little beach cottage, she opens the front door and finds an abandoned baby on her front porch. And this is not the welcome basket she wants from her neighbors. And what this baby does is it forces Brooke to engage with the very tight-knit and quirky community of Provincetown. And in the process, she ends up, instead of leaving her past behind, she finds it right again once in front of her to contend with. So that's the gist of Summer Longing.
Awesome. Thank you, Jamie. Kerry, over to you. Oh, no, sorry. Jane is next. On to Jane. Sorry.
So my book is The Friends We Keep, which just came out in paperback. And it was inspired by my hitting middle age and realizing that my life was much more isolated and lonelier than I ever expected it to be. And I started having these kind of fantasies of, once the kids leave, gathering friends and buying like a piece of land and creating this fantastic commune with sort of tiny houses for each of us and a communal barn kitchen. And I realized the beauty of being a novelist is I could kind of experiment with that in a book. So it tells the story of three friends who meet at university when they're 18 and they become what they think are lifelong friends. They live together, they adore each other, they swear they'll be friends forever. But of course, life gets in the way. As the years go by, they gradually lose touch and they get back together unexpectedly for their 30th reunion, their college reunion, and they're all on their own for whatever reason, and they decide to give living together a try again. But of course, this idyll that they create is threatened enormously, because what they don't know is that one of them is harboring this huge secret from the past that threatens to destroy everything. So that's The Friends We Keep, which is out in paperback now.
I love that. Thank you. Kerry, East Coast Girls, tell us about it.
I'm so worried the microphone won't work. Does it still work?
It's working okay. You're a little hard to hear, but we got you. Just speak loudly and clearly.
Okay, so East Coast Girls is about four girls who grow up together. They have very dysfunctional families, so they become kind of a feral pack of friends and raise each other. And then one terrible, tragic night in high school, something happens to them that changes everything. So we meet them again at 30. They're going back to the last place that they were truly happy, which is these summers they spent together in Montauk, in the hopes of reconnecting with their innocence and their joy and each other. But of course, best laid plans and secrets come to the surface about that night that they've never told each other, they've never talked about it, and the story.
I'm hearing secrets. I'm hearing like there's some commonality in these books, and we're going to turn it over to the queen of the secrets right now, Meg Mitchell-Moore, because Two Truths and a Lie is all secrets and lies. One of my friends, Jen DeLeon, who has a YA novel coming out later on this summer, says that secrets and lies are the proteins of fiction. And I feel like your book would be Atkins approved. No,
I like it.
That's the easiest thing I could ever say. But tell us about your truth.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you so much for having me. And for all the other panels that I watched today, they're fantastic. And if you guys don't know, Jen has been doing this since 10 a.m. with barely any breaks, and she's nailing it. So congratulations. So Two Truths and a Lie just came out. It's not even been a week. It came out last week, and 2 weeks ago. Anyway, it just came out. And it takes place in Newburyport, Massachusetts, where I live, which is a beautiful coastal town in New England, northern Massachusetts, almost on the New Hampshire border. And it is about, on the surface, it's about a group of mothers of 11-year-old girls, 12 moms, 12 daughters, who've grown up together. The moms have been friends forever. And a new mother-daughter duo comes to town and wants to get into the group. But they have a dark past that they're hiding from that they can't let anybody learn about. So that's one of the secrets. But there are other secrets going on, and a lot of different lives intersecting. And it's about these groups of moms and daughters, but it's also a lot about grief and a lot about falling in and out of love, and a lot about how well we let ourselves know the people that are close to us and how well we know the people that we think we know.
Love it. Ah, so good. I mean, your books all sound so wonderful and complex. And the reason we grouped you all together is because they're all about these groups of people and relationships and communities. And the primary thing obviously when we think of, we're talking about beach reads today, and there's no, really any book can be a beach read, but your books all have, you know, your current or past releases have, you know, coastal ties to coastal locations. And in this case, we're talking about, you know, we just had our romance panel, but not all beach reads are romance centric. And in fact, many focus more on relationships that are non-romantic, and all of your books are doing this. So I'm wondering, was this intentional for this book of yours? Did you set out to write about, say, I want to write about, you know, small town relationships, or I want to write about motherhood, or I want to write about friendships evolving over time? Jane, we'll start with you. Can you talk a little bit about that for the Friends We Keep?
Yeah, I think for me, I really love writing what I think of as ensemble pieces. I like writing about a group of characters and watching the dynamic between them. I have written books in the past that are focused very much on one or two people, but that isn't what I love. You know, you remember that movie, The Big Chill? I love that movie so much, and I love Armistead Maupin books. I love books by A.M. Holmes. I love books that write about disparate people that somehow come together and create a kind of family of choice. And so I think that's really my passion, kind of connection and community. And so whatever the theme is, and every book has a different theme, I think it always, the overlay to anything is a group of people that come together and find kind of peace with one another.
I love that. Thank you, Jane. How about you, Jamie?
Yes. I have similar interest to Jane in that all of my books are sort of exploring the notion of there's the family we're born into, and then there's the family we choose along the way in life. It was true when I left my family, my hometown, Philadelphia, for New York in my 20s. I was really starting over, and I was finding mother figures, and I was finding sisters I never had and best friendships. And these are the relationships that have really sustained me for the past 25 years. So all of my books, this one included Summer Longing, are about people who find themselves in a situation and they meet someone who changes their perspective in a way that is life-changing, if not life-saving, not literally, but emotionally perhaps. Summer Longing was my attempt to explore motherhood in all different angles. I had mother in the title originally, but it was changed. And but still, motherhood is an unmistakable thread throughout. Motherhood from the perspective of someone with grown children. Motherhood from the perspective of someone who doesn't want children. Motherhood from the perspective of someone trying to become a mother. Motherhood changes how we see ourselves. So that's really, I think, the biggest theme of this book.
Great, thank you. And you, Meg, I know you live in Newburyport. You're writing about your hometown. And
not about anybody in my hometown, I promise.
Sure it isn't.
But I am, I write a lot about motherhood in all of my books as well, Jamie. And in this particular book, I'm really interested in the idea, I think this is sort of contemporary, of the way that groups of kids and groups of mothers often overlap. I think that has a lot to do with social media. And I don't remember, it could be different for other people, but when I grew up, I don't remember that my mother's friends were the mothers of my friends. We had our separate friends, or, you know, sometimes they would overlap, but particularly what I've observed in my town is there are groups of women and there are groups of kids, and they are often the same groups. And whether the mothers became friends because the kids met, or the kids became friends because the mothers met, I don't know. But it's really interesting to me to watch those circles overlap. And I think, and you throw in social media, and I have a lot with a little secret of a 17-year-old daughter who's doing something on social media. When you throw that in the mix, it's really interesting because you sort of can keep an eye on these other groups that aren't yours. And you also can't escape it when you want to escape it. So I think that's where a lot of my, what I was trying to look at in this book was the relationships among people who maybe wouldn't have intersected 20 years ago, but do now.
Very cool. I love that. And how about you, Kerry? You've got this group of friends.
Yeah. Again, can you hear me? Yeah.
Sort of. You're in and out, but we're.
Okay, shoot. I'm trying to like talk so close.
I know.
So I am very affected. I've had lifelong friends that have been such a saving grace in my life. So primarily, I wanted to honor them by writing this book. And what was going on in my life at the time was that my best friend got very sick. And though there is no sickness in this book, I was grappling with how do you love someone when you might lose them, and watching my friends grapple with it, and all of us handling this sort of traumatic situation in a different way. And I really wanted to explore the way that people respond to trauma differently, and not only how they respond differently, but how that interferes in their relationships with each other, because they're misinterpreting and miscommunicating because they're, employing all these defense mechanisms and everything to deal with it. So I really wanted to just have this trauma between these lifelong friends and then have them figure out the way through it where they can see each other again and see each other's hearts and get past, this thing that's dividing them.
Yeah. No, that's great. And you can see that, because that's the thing about, we all react to trauma differently, right? And we all handle it differently, and we all have different histories with each other that, complex situations then, kind of bring out. So they're interesting questions. I mean, these are interesting relationships to explore. And we're here, again, we're in this beach world of talking about summer, and there's a lot of community in all of your books, and certainly I know, Jane, this one is a little less beach specific for you, but you have so many that are grounded in these coastal communities and things like that. Did setting come first, or did the characters come first and then you put the set? Then you decided this has to take place here. Or did you say, I want to write about, I'm going to ask this to Meg, because, were you like, I want to write about Newburyport? Or did this start out with, I'm going to write about this town, and you know what, I kind of live in a town like this, so why not make it Newburyport?
This time I wanted to write about Newburyport. So my last summer's book was set on Block Island, off the coast of Rhode Island, and next summer's book is set in Maine, and I'm starting to run out of New England places to set books. But Newburyport is so wonderful in the summer, and I set one book here early in my writing career, and it was set over the winter, and nobody read that book. I love that book, but not a lot of people read it. So the setting there, I really loved getting it's an old town. There's a lot of history here. It's fascinating, and I got a lot of that into that book. And this time I wanted to get a lot of the town into it, but have the summer vibe. I mean, anyone who lives in New England knows that you wait a really long time for summer, through a long winter and a really ugly spring. And then it's summer and everything opens up. Not this summer. Usually everything opens up and the town comes alive. So I wanted to capture that. And I wanted to set it over that period of the June, July, August. So I did start with the setting this time. Sometimes I start with the characters of the situation and try to figure out where to put them. But this time I love this community and I love the town, and I wanted to write about it.
Awesome. Jamie, how about you? I know you have Provincetown as a special place. You're there right now, and that holds a special place to your heart, in your heart. And for those of you who don't know, who aren't Cape people, Provincetown's a very unique community. So I'm wondering if that led you to this book, because it is so unique.
Absolutely. This book could only take place logically in Provincetown, because the choices these characters make would seem insane anywhere else. Reasons why I love Provincetown, and Michael Cunningham perhaps said it best when he said Provincetown is the only place he knows of that prefers peculiarity. And he meant that in the best possible way, and that's what I've experienced here. There is a code here that people take care of their own. It is a completely welcoming and inclusive place, the greatest place in that sense that I've ever experienced. And I've lived in New York City for 25 years. So when this woman finds a baby on her porch, anywhere else, the logical thing is you call some sort of authority. But here she is counseled by a town elder that, wait a minute, one of our own might be in trouble. Let's slow down and figure out what's going on here. And in Provincetown, that makes total sense.
Yeah, I love that. And if you haven't been to Provincetown and you make a trip, it's so worth it. It's such a cool place. Kerry, how about you? I know Montauk has a special place in your life, right?
Yeah, I grew up spending my summers in East Hampton and surfing in Montauk, so I love it. But also, Montauk is a very unique place because 30 years ago, it was just like an old fishing village, and nobody went there. And then it became really, like a hip place to go. So you have this like old school, new school sort of thing. And I felt like the sense of it changing over time, but the bones of the place remaining the same really reflected the girls and their relationship. So
That's great.
I'm always going to write about water just because I'm obsessed with it myself. So
I love that. I'm always going to write about water just because I'm obsessed with it. That's sort of how I feel too. And Jane, let's talk to you. Does setting come first for you usually, or do characters come first? Or
so many years ago, actually before I was writing my first novel, a friend of mine had published a book, and she said to me at the time, if you do the work on your characters correctly, if they come to life, they will tell their own stories. And so I always have a rough idea of a theme or a message, but then I really do leave it up to the characters. In terms of setting, I love having houses as characters. I mean, so I think more about a house or a structure that becomes, a central character in the book. I don't think about beach reads or beach settings, and my first book was published in 1998, which is quite a long time ago. And what I've seen is how the trends come and go, and the publishers will seize onto that trend and then sort of shoehorn every book into that trend. So, in the beginning there was chick lit, and every cover for years was pink with high heels and legs on it. And then it became, now it's the beach read. And so, it's wonderful because there are so many beach reads, but the problem with that is you also get a lot of books that deal with some very serious issues. I know Patty Callahan Henry had a book last year dealing with couple of years ago with very serious issues. But the cover was a beach, and actually it had nothing to do with summer or beaches. And in fact, The Friends We Keep, you would think that was set, in Cape Cod or somewhere. It's set in the English countryside.
Yep.
I mean, there's a little bit in New York and there's a little bit in Connecticut, but it is mostly in kind of Somerset and Golden Stone old English country houses. But that is not what publishers believe. Publishers tend to it's always easier to be able to sort of pigeonhole people. So we are now in the era of the beach read.
Yep. I totally agree. We actually had this conversation a little bit in our last panel about, how these books, there's an unfair and inaccurate, in my opinion, assumption that, anyone writing about women or women's fiction or anything is somehow less serious, less if it's about relationships, or if there's an element of joy or, God forbid, a happy ending, that it lacks gravitas in some way. And I can tell you, all of your books, I know for a fact, a lot happens, and we deal with very, very serious issues. People are going through real heartbreaking stuff, and they're working with, in these really difficult, they're working through these really difficult problems. Yeah. So
another personal bugbear of mine, which I think only happens to women, and I'd love to know from the other panelists whether this is when you go to parties or something and people say, so are you still writing? As if it's like a little thing that you just, not like, well, this is the way you support your family, therefore, of course you're still like, are you still banking? Or are you hanging out at home?
Backing up to the whole beach read topic, because it's a big topic. I started reading beach reads maybe 10 years ago with Ellen Hildebrand. But her books were always weighty. Yes. And I think the beauty of beach reads is you can take a serious topic and put it in a bucolic setting. And sometimes the contrast between a beautiful setting and a serious life event heightens the drama, but that's the way, and that's also the way life is. Like, life doesn't stop just because you're on vacation. You still might fight with your husband. Someone in your family might get cancer, and this can unfold at a beach. And I like the fact that beach books can explore that. So I feel like even though there are a lot of beach books now, I've always experienced beach books as something that offers more than just like romance.
Yes.
Yeah, I think that's true. And I think there's another misconception that if a book is set on a beach or set in a summer community, it was probably easy to write. So I just want to correct that right now, because no book is easy to write. Any book with a plot is harder than a book with no plot. And I think if you are going to be marketed as a beach book, you have to have that plot that's going to keep people turning the pages. So that's a misconception that bothers me, sort of, is, oh, easy to read, easy to write. Those two things are not equal. So just
I think actually I completely agree with everything that Meg and Jamie just said. I think perhaps what I was talking about before was when it's not set in a bucolic setting, when it's not set by a beach, when it has nothing whatsoever to do with summer, and yet it is packaged as a beach read. I think perhaps beach read is something of a misnomer, as chicklet always was, but it's easy to sell. The truth is, what we're all writing is strong commercial fiction, and it's just easier to put it into a category.
Yeah, I so agree with everything that you ladies are saying. I mean, this is all so good. Kerry, do you have any thoughts to add to this in terms of?
I was just laughing at Jane because I was just saying to my boyfriend last night that it's so weird when people say to me, keep writing. And I'm like, that's my job. Like, nobody says, like, keep being a doctor.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know what that is. I know they're well-intentioned, but it does make me laugh.
Yeah. Well, because you all are writers and you're all working writers, let's go into a little bit of craft question, which is, I'd love to know, are you, there's a term for those of you who are not writers, that it's a pantser or a plotter. How much in advance do you outline? Or are you more, do you sort of write and, like, for example, Jamie brought up Ellen Hildebrand. I know she writes longhand on the beach and kind of lets it flow organically. What's your process? And let's start with, who haven't we started with? Let's start with Kerry again. And Kerry, if you can just try to lean close. I know it's hard. I'm so sorry. I know everyone's trying to hear you, and we appreciate you all bearing with us, and we appreciate you soldiering on through. We just want to say Kerry's awesome. It's not, when something goes wrong, it is really, really hard to like maintain your cool, and you're doing a great job. So thank you.
Thanks. I'm trying to like talk fast and short, and then turn it over to everybody else. What was the question?
Are you an outliner? How do you go about the actual craft process of writing?
I usually just sit down and start writing, and then immediately something comes, and I'm always thinking that that's going to lead me through the entire novel, but it actually is about a chapter.
Yep.
And then I have to start like outlining and thinking about what I'm writing, but I don't completely outline it. That would bore me to death, for me personally, to know what was going.
How about you, Meg? Are you an outliner? Or are you do you brainstorm first? What's your process like?
I'm a non-outliner, always trying to become an outliner. Always. I always think it's going to work for me, and it hasn't, and I don't think it will, but I'll still try again next time. So I usually have a general idea of where the book is ending. I think I heard somebody else say that in one of the earlier panels today. So I'm sort of writing toward a general ending, but it's never a straight line to get there. I also always have more than one point of view. So trying to weave those together and give the right amount of time to each character, I can't do that in an outline. I have to do that after the fact. So I usually write a really messy draft, then I outline, and then I start trying to organize from there. Someday I'm going to write that perfect outline.
I want to talk a little bit more about the multiple point of view things too, because this is something you all do. But for now, Jane, what's your process?
As I said earlier, I definitely have the characters drive the story. I have written books that I have outlined every chapter. When I wrote Jemima J, it was in the very early days of computers, and my computer broke, and I was stuck in LA, in Santa Monica, without a computer. And so I used to go to a cafe with a notebook, and I literally I wrote every chapter, like 2 pages on every chapter. So when I actually got my computer back and started writing, it was kind of like writing by numbers. And I loved it then. But actually, I think what works better for me is I tend to follow the very traditional Greek 3-act structure. I tend to I know instinctively that at the end of every act, you need a sort of dramatic plot point that will take you into the next act. And I have an idea of what the ending is, but I allow myself tremendous amounts of flexibility because the characters will always dictate where the story goes.
I love that. Jamie, how about you? What's your process like?
So I always start with an inciting incident, something happens, and then I know what the crisis is going to be, and I know what the resolution will be. Then I try to sort of connect the dots, outlining through those 3 points. And then because I always do 3 points of view, at least, then you figure out how each person's point of view is going to like kind of shove the story along. But as the other writers have said, it tends to change as you're trying to go. But I need some sort of map. I'm amazed by authors who say they just go where the story takes them. Like I'd never be able to sleep at night.
I love that. I know, and I feel like it gives everybody. If you're one way, it like gives you panic. Like you panic at the idea of not outlining, and the other way, you're like, oh, but I can't come up with the story just doing bullet points. Like I have to be writing it in order to get to the next thing. It's like I feel like I'm a little bit in between, so it's a weird thing. I kind of go in and out of each one. But the let's talk about the multiple points of view thing, because this is something that you all do. Not necessarily, again, if you didn't do it in this book, have done it previously, or at least have many characters that play substantial roles in balancing characters, especially if you're going to talk about them. This is the point of view, and I'm going to embody this person. Do you struggle with that balance? How do you go about achieving that balance? How do you try to use word choice to make characters sound differently, or do you how do you approach it? And let's start. Let's throw it back to Jamie on this one and start off with Jamie.
So one of the principles of writing fiction is that your characters have to be polarized, meaning they all are in contrast to each other. And if you have that polarization figured out before you begin, once you're rolling, it should be fine, because their point of views are going to be so different. So you may say, okay, everyone's at this lunch, but they're all going to experience whatever happened differently. Yep. So to me, that's never been a problem. The only time I have a problem is if I haven't, from the beginning, truly figured out what makes this person different than this person. That, again, goes back to planning. It's not something I really grapple with once I'm in the groove of writing, because it's stuff I've thought about from the onset.
Yeah, that's so great. And also this goes for, do you prefer to write, a single protagonist? I've heard several of you saying you prefer to write multiple, but do you prefer a single protagonist? If so, why? Kerry, what are your thoughts on this?
Well, my first book, because I read a young adult book before this, was first person. And I thought that was so hard that I decided to write 3 characters, and that was harder. So
that was harder.
I'll definitely go back to first. But I do think that because they all experience trauma and they all experience it differently, once I decided what their coping mechanism of choice was, it was easy for me to figure out who they were and how their lives went.
Yeah.
So, to what Amy said.
That's so great. Meg, what are your thoughts on this?
I've always written multiple points of view, and I would love to not do that sometime. I think it would be so refreshing, but I don't think my brain works that way. I don't think I could do a single narrator, but maybe someday. I don't know. I struggle with, in this book, I actually left out an entire point of view. I loved this 17-year-old character so much. Her name is Alexa. I just kept writing her point of view. And then my editor read the draft and said, her mother has to be a separate point of view. We can't just learn about her through the daughter. So I had to go back and add basically a whole third of the book, oh, wow. Which I hadn't really noticed on my own. So thank goodness for editors. And she was right. She was completely right. So that was the first time I think that's happened, but I do struggle with how to fit them together because I usually have a pretty good idea of who each one of them is. separately, but then how they overlap, sometimes I struggle with. In my last summer's book, The Islanders, I had these two, well, it was three characters all on Block Island, and two of them didn't really intersect the right way. And then I think my editor said they should be, or my agent, somebody said they should be neighbors. And I thought, oh my gosh, of course they should be neighbors so that they have all these interactions. But I hadn't seen that. So I struggle with connecting them properly more than creating them.
I love that. Jane, how about you? What are your thoughts on, do you have a preferred way of writing? You've written so many books that I'm sure you've explored it all.
So I think on a one of the things that I'm always very mindful of with my characters is their conscious desires versus their unconscious desires. So what they think they want versus what they actually want, which kind of drives their journey through the book. You know, what, when we meet them at the beginning, and it actually where they end up is usually very different because it's their unconscious desire that takes them through the story. And I would also say that some books are easier than others. And the books that for me have been the most joyous and the easiest to write are the ones where, for whatever reason, maybe I've done more work on the characters, but the characters have just jumped off the page. And so The Sunshine Sisters was a book I wrote a couple of years ago. And there are three sisters. And from the get-go, they were all so distinct and their personalities were so different that their voices just came very, very easy. I mean, it almost felt like watching a movie unfold in my mind and just sort of letting it come out through my fingers. And I think just some characters just do jump off the page like that.
I love that. Oh my gosh. I'm just thinking about like Jane's, like, you know, I'm thinking about your and I'm sure everybody who is on this panel and who is listening in and viewing, you know how important Jane Green is to this genre and how, and when I say this genre, I mean books with heart told from a female perspective that are smart, intelligent, emotional, and, you know, and fun too. And that's like you certainly have inspired me. I'm sure you've inspired everyone here. I'm amazed by how you keep doing it. I know it's your job. I'm amazed at how the ideas come with quality. And I say this too, like I see Meg and Jamie, both of you doing this, because I know you're on, you know, you're starting to get your multiple books and you're on tight deadlines. And I know Kerry, you're at the you've done your YA one. This is your sorry. And yes, I said your debut novel, and I am so incorrect with that. And I want to back that up because this is your debut adult novel. You do have your YA novel. I'm going to change the question a little bit for you because I wonder if that's a goal of yours. But Jane, let me ask you that. Did you know at the outset, like, I'm going to write a book a year, I'm going to do this, or, you know, I'm going to write consistently, I'm going to get, did you have a long-term plan, and how do you sustain that enthusiasm, the ideas, the everything? Can you?
Jenna, such a great question. So no, I had no plan. I mean, I read High Fidelity by Nick Hornby in 1997 and thought, hey, you know, no one's doing this for women, like writing about every woman, because back in the 80s and 90s, commercial fiction, the only sort of commercial fiction for women were, you know, I mean, wonderful books, Judith Krantz, Barbara Taylor Bradford, Jackie Collins, but it was all glitz and shoulder pads and aspiration and aspirational rock stars and huge houses. And nobody was actually writing about the sort of 20, 30 something woman living in a flat in London. Of course, I didn't know that Helen Fielding was, you know, a mile and a half away from me in her Ladbroke Grove flat writing Bridget Jones's Diary. But I just wrote a book about my girlfriends and I, and that hit the bestseller list and became this huge hit. And I don't think I ever thought for a second, I didn't have a plan, but I was a journalist, and I was an essay writer and a feature writer. And so what that taught me was the discipline of writing, because I had an editor standing over me every day. So when I worked for a national newspaper, saying, Jane, we need 1,000 words on X in an hour. And I couldn't say, well, I'm so sorry, but I'm not inspired today. Try me again tomorrow. I had to write. And so I've always written quickly. I wrote quickly as a journalist. I write quickly, whether I'm writing essays now or nonfiction, whether it's fiction. But sustaining it has been really hard. And sometimes, I mean, I definitely thought a couple of years ago, I'm not sure I've got this in me anymore. I don't know how many novels I actually, I've just finished my 21st novel, and I really thought, gosh, I don't know that I still have stories to tell. So what I did, I have been writing my first nonfiction book, which is sort of part memoir, part prescriptive, basically how to kind of figure out who the hell you are and the friends you should have in your life and how to have a happy marriage and in midlife, kind of in 50s. And it's about loneliness and connection and community and all of those good things. But what it's done, I've loved it so much because it's sort of going back to my roots, that it's made me very excited about writing novels again. And actually, I have come up with a sequel to The Beach House that I really, really love. And I'm excited about writing. I'm still excited, after all these years. And in fact, I'm starting this book on Monday. So,
yay! Oh my gosh! May the force be with you. It's such a great answer. Meg, what are your thoughts on this? Do you have a particular, do you have a writing schedule in terms of a publishing schedule that you're trying to cultivate? Do you find it helps to keep sustaining the momentum? What?
Yeah, I do right now. I have hopefully for the last summer, this summer, and the next 2 summers, I should have a book come out if all goes as planned. So this is my first attempt at going to that book a year schedule, and we'll see how it goes. I'm in such admiration of Jane for writing so many books. I mean, it's so inspiring to see that, because it's true. It's when it's your job, you have to do your job, and you also have to find joy in it, because if you don't, that's going to come through to the reader, and that's the tricky balance. It's not like going to other jobs that you do them the same way all the time. You have to do this in a certain way, but you still have to do it on schedule. I also wrote nonfiction for a long time before writing fiction, and I agree with that word count. I love that 1,000 words. Yes, I can do 1,000 words in a day, no matter what. I know I can do that. So that's how I keep myself going, just bit by bit, and we'll see how it goes from here. But so far, so good.
That's so great. Kerry, how about you? Is this a goal you have? How long did it take you to write East Coast Girls?
3 years.
3 years?
Yeah, 3 years. And I know it is a goal of my publisher that I publish every year. So they'll take me for this. But no, it is not my goal. I'm a very slow writer. And also, I find publishing, not writing, but publishing a little bit overwhelming. It takes an emotional toll on me to have a book come out. And I don't think I could do it once a year. I admire people who can. But for me, I don't know. There's something about that feeling exposed when it's released that I really struggle with. So, I'd rather maybe every 2 or 3 years.
Interesting. I wonder if that changes over time. As you get better at the skill of and I think about this myself because it's taken me years to work on my novel and it's not even out. It's just something. Jamie, how about you? What are your thoughts on this? Have you always been a fast writer? Is that something that's changed?
Well, I've been doing a book a year for 6 years. And whenever I get stressed out about the deadlines, again, I look at Ellen Hildebrand, who's doing 2 books a year. Yeah. And I tell myself to stop complaining. Yeah. Because I feel so lucky. This is my job. It's literally how I support myself. And I love it. And it's not easy to stay on schedule, but I feel like it's a small price to pay to be able to do this work. So again, I haven't done 20 books. Who knows what I'll be saying, 14 years from now. But for now, it's what I want to do. And I'm just grateful to be able to do it.
I love that. Thank you. We're gonna do a little bit of a fun one right now. And I did, this is a little spin-off of a question I asked in the romance panel. And the question I asked in the romance panel was, who would you choose to have a romantic getaway with from any of your characters? But for you guys, I'm going to say, let's think, we're all isolated. We wish we could go places. If you could take a summer getaway, a summer trip, or any sort of trip, it doesn't have to be summery, with one of your characters, it can be either from this book or it can be from a previous book. Or if there's someone you're dying with in the body of, dying to go away with in the body of literature that like you think would be your best friend, or a great travel companion, I'd love to know who that is. Kerry, can we start with you?
Jane Green.
Yeah, you're gonna pick Jane. You can be a real person.
Yeah.
I love that. Well, Jane, since your name was called, who would you go away with?
Well, for my characters, I was thinking, well, first of all, I probably wouldn't go away because I'm a little bit of a hermit and I love my home. I mean, honestly, quarantine has been heaven. Other than I miss seeing my friends and I miss hugging the people, outside of my family. I have had some socially distanced times when I've been like, stay away, and I really miss hugging people. I'm a hugger, but so I probably wouldn't leave my house, but I would have. Of my characters, the most fun character that I've written for years was the youngest sister in the Sunshine Sisters, Lizzie. And just because she was completely outrageous, she didn't give a damn about anybody. And I just think that she, I loved her and she was so real to me. And I'd love to just have her over here and getting up to no good with her.
I love that. Jamie, how about you?
A lot of tequila, I think.
Yeah. Yes. And for those of you who don't know, Jane has, you should, number one, you should follow all of these ladies on Instagram. It's at Jamie Brenner Writes, at K Kletter, at Meg Mitchell Moore, and at Jane Green Author on Instagram, right? Yes. And you will get glimpses of Jane's beautiful home, which is so stunning. And you will see the Top Chef worthy cooking competitions that she and her children have on a nice nightly basis. It's amazing.
Just need to say at this point, if you do follow me, it's actually not real. Instagram is not real. I mean, I do. But also just know that when you look at pictures of my perfect kitchen, seconds before that I took that picture, I moved 8 piles of crap that hit the ceiling just, a few feet over, out of shot.
Don't destroy our illusions, Jane. Jamie, how about you? If you could go away with any of your characters or a literary character, or you can choose Jane Green again.
Well, I'm going to not choose Jane only because I like older characters. I'm always, like I said, I love the mother figures in my book. So I guess my character would be Amelia from The Forever Summer, who's the mother or the grandmother I wish I had in my life for real. So I do write the mothers and grandmothers I wish I had. She's one of them. And I would be with her right here in Provincetown.
So great. How about you, Meg?
Well, first Jane Green, obviously, because everybody wants to go away with Jane Green. And then after that, I didn't pick one, but I would go to Black Island and I would live with the characters from the Islanders. There are 3 main characters and I love them all. And I would like to just hang out with them and see all these. I had to learn a lot about Black Island to write that book. So I'd like to go back and revisit all the places with them. And then there's a 13-year-old daughter of one of the characters. And now I have a 13-year-old daughter. My youngest just turned 13. So they could meet and they could hang out. So I think that's what I do. A weekend in Black Island with the Islanders characters.
I love that. I should have asked where you would go too. What you would like. So Jane would be at her house. She would be at your house. Jamie, I assume you'd go to Amelia, or would you be, or would you go elsewhere? Would you go to Provincetown with her, or would you go?
Yeah, I'd go. She runs it in, so just move right in there.
Yeah. And Kerry, we've already established you're going to Jane Green's house. Perfect. I love that. I'm thinking about this, and I'm going way off. I sent out lists of questions, and now, of course, things are occurring to me because we're chatting, and I'm so interested in. You're all so interesting, and you write these interesting characters that have such unique skills and hobbies and things. I'm wondering, and this is sort of a two-parter, if you have any sort of secret talent or skill or affinity for something that is not writing, and maybe something that, if you weren't a writer, you would be this thing. So, Meg, I'm going to start with you.
Right. I don't have any secret talents. I really have writing, and that's it. I can't draw, I can't sing, I can't do anything else that my daughters can all do. But I do really like to cook. And in The Islanders, I had a character who was a food blogger, a female food blogger masquerading as a male food blogger, and she was so much fun to write. So I think, and there's never enough time in the day, and my kitchen's not as nice as Jane's, so there's a lot of cooking that I haven't gotten to that I would like to spend a lot more time doing in the future. But I don't have no secret talent. I wish I did.
I love that. Jamie, how about you?
I don't know if it's a secret talent, but my other dream job was to be a makeup artist. And I worked for a makeup company all through college, and I really wanted to be a makeup artist. I just didn't know how to do it, and it didn't seem like a real thing. This is before like Instagram and everyone's doing tutorials. So sadly, I did not go down that path. But that would be my alternate job.
I love that. That's so great. Also creative. Kerry, how about you?
Well, I was an actress before.
Yeah.
I was an actress, and
Yeah.
I was a singer when I was younger. I was almost Annie in the movie Annie back in like totally dating myself. But yeah, so I don't know, maybe acting, but I've always wanted to be a therapist. So
Nice.
That's, my friends think I am Dr. Kletter.
Well, that makes sense. It makes sense because you're getting psychologically into the heads of your characters. You're really thinking about that. I love that. And Jane, I feel like I can answer, like, I'm going to let you answer, but I want to point out, like, Jane could basically be Martha Stewart in, like, the cooking. And if you haven't seen, she's doing these amazing painted shells that she has one, and she'll hold it up, that she's doing these oyster shells that she's gilding and painting, and they are amazing, and she's selling them. And please don't all order them, because I know she was at her kitchen table yesterday making 40,000 of these. But Jane, what would you be if you were a writer, or is there something what's your favorite little hidden talent?
Well, honestly, I think of myself as being jack of all trades, master of none. So I do tons of things, but well enough that I can pull the wool over people's eyes, but not so well that I could ever have a career in them. So I cook. I went to culinary school, so I always sort of say I'm a slightly trained chef. But you know what? I'm not a great cook. I'm a fine home cook. I love comfort food. I love easy dishes. I know how to build a dish. But I wouldn't have been like a star chef. I love gardening, but I sort of know enough that it looks okay until it doesn't. I did go to art school, so I probably out of all of them, it would have been something creative. It would have been an artist or a designer of some kind. Like, I love interior design and just creating very sort of warm, comfortable, beautiful spaces, we're inside, outside. And that's because I'm a homebody. That's because I don't leave my house. And so if you want to spend time with me, then you have to come over to my house.
I love it. Oh, don't invite everyone, Jane. We will show up.
Open house policy, honestly.
I love it. You're gonna regret that.
Yeah.
Before we go, I want to talk about, we're living in strange times right now. We're living in very interesting times. And, there's, in my mind, there's need for reflection and examination. And there's also more need than ever for joy. And the thing that I get out of all of your books is joy. And, it's emotional satisfaction. It's yes, there's some escaping, because you're always escaping when you dive into a really gripping book, because you're getting to enter somebody else's life. I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about whether this has changed your perception of your writing, reinforced it, made you more committed to this, to the types of books you write, and how you feel about how hard it is. It's hard to be somebody who brings joy to other people during hard times. I'm sure you're all experiencing, confusion and anxiety along with the rest of us, how are you able to still go and do your work and keep it joyful? Let's start with you, Kerry.
Well, I always, whatever's going on in my life, I try to use in my work, because I always feel like if I'm working through an issue, then it's probably an issue somebody else has, and that's all I ever want, is for other people to feel seen and, create resonance. So I just am taking what I'm feeling and trying to figure out, how to live in this world, which I think we're sort of inundated with trauma right now, which is what I was right about, and how I'm experiencing that, and then how I can work through that, through the characters, in the hopes of, connecting with other people in the experience.
That's so great. So great. Jane, how about you?
So I couldn't write at all during the first couple of months. Actually, it was only a couple of weeks ago that I was able to start writing and reading again. I couldn't focus, and I felt so low and frightened, and I just wasn't. The writing was not the kind of writing I wanted to do, and I think what I've always done, whatever's going on in the world or in my life, is I have to mentally get myself into the right headspace when I write. So when I sit down at my desk in the morning, before I start writing, I almost do a sort of meditation that just gets me into a place where I feel excited and happy and optimistic, and I have to very deliberately and mindfully put myself into that space, because that's what I want reflected in the writing.
Thank you, Jane. That's so wonderful. And I do the same. I meditate always before I write because of that. Meg, how about you?
Yeah, it's a strange time. It's a strange time to be promoting a book. It's a strange time to be writing a book. It's a strange time to be reading books. So I've struggled with that. I've struggled. I'm working on my second draft of next summer's book, and it's really hard to get back into it. So I'm struggling for my own work, but also trying to figure out what I'm offering to people. And in a way, yes, everybody says beach read means escape. That's great. So sure, that is great. But there are also a lot of things people shouldn't be escaping right now. So it's a really tricky balance. I mean, people are talking about a lot of diversity in books, and I'm a white woman. My book is set in a town full of a lot of white people. So it's a really strange time to put that book out there and say, hey, everybody read about this, because I do understand that we all need to be reading more diverse books. So as a writer, I haven't figured out what to do about that. As a reader, I think I myself need to open myself up more and read more out of my comfort zone, or books I haven't heard of, or writers I don't know. And thank goodness for social media, because now I'm learning about all sorts of Black-owned bookstores and writers I didn't know, and I am trying to expand that way. As a writer, I haven't quite figured out how to expand.
I so agree with you. And that that's something that's very important. There's a lot that we're all learning. I feel like I'm learning so much every day, and feel so grateful that we have these tools to help us learn more quickly. At A Mighty Blaze, we have a wonderful author named Nancy Johnson, who's a Black woman who just joined our team, and she put together this amazing action plan for readers and for authors. That's on our Mighty Blaze Instagram and Facebook page. And there's a pledge you can take if you like, as a reader, to diversify your bookshelves, to support local independent stores that are Black owned or minority owned. And there's also some thoughts for authors as well, for action items they might be able to take. So that would be, thank you for bringing that up. There's lots of thoughts, and it's something that I think about a lot too, as somebody who writes about white women in white spaces and generally, and that's a thing we all have to contend with. Jamie, I'm gonna put it over to you.
Yeah, so I mean, these are issues I've always been aware of, because books set in Provincetown is notoriously one of the most inclusive places in the country, primarily it's known as an LGBTQ community, but it's inclusive in terms of race, ethnicity, like everything across the board. It's just like, yeah, come here, do your thing, you do you. So I think setting books here has been able, like, let me explore the world the way I would like it to be, not necessarily the way the world is in terms of the greater world. And some of it's wish fulfillment, but some of it is sort of the inclusion I've experienced here. But again, I do try to, I write for my own sanity and mental health, and I think people read for their mental health. And I'm trying not to put too much pressure on myself right now to do things in a different way or a certain way. Like, I think as artists, we're trying to be the best possible versions of ourselves. And through the pandemic and everything that's happening, it's like we are just like a small speck in this like much larger moment in history. And I'm just like, I'm just thankful for like a community that I feel is like super well intentioned. And I feel like very optimistic that everyone's in the right direction. Like, I actually feel like, especially when I'm talking to other writers, but like it's going to be okay.
I know, whenever I'm in a, like, thank you guys, like listening to you all, I feel like it's going to be okay right now. We are at the end of our time together. I want to go lightning round real quick, because this is a question from the chat. And I'm going to combine it with something that we've done all day, which is, tell me one book that you are either reading or looking forward to reading this at this moment in your life. Because I know we're not all reading because you're on deadlines, you're on tours, you're doing things, but like either one book you're currently reading or looking forward to reading. And can you give us a shout out at the same time to one of your favorite independent bookstores? So let's start, Meg, with you.
I'm reading 28 Summers by Ellen Hildebrand. It's amazing, of course. Next up is The Vanishing Half by Britt Bennett, which I can't wait to read. What was the other bookstores?
An independent bookstore, yeah.
And Jabberwocky in Newburyport, and the Bookshop of Beverly Farms, which is supporting a lot of our efforts today. Both wonderful stores. Thank
you. Jamie, how about you?
So definitely shout out to Provincetown Bookstore and East End Books, both here in Provincetown. And I'm reading We Came Here to Shine by Susie Orman Schnall.
Susie, who I think was on earlier today, and loved her. She's awesome. Her book sounds super great. Oh, and she's in here. She's in the chat. She says thank you. Kerry, how about you?
Bookstore Brookhampton, for sure, East Hampton. And then I'm reading right now Euphoria by Lily King, and I'm looking forward to Stray by Stephanie Danler. I love her Sweet Bitter, so those are
Jane, how about you?
So I just finished a book that I loved so much that I'm having to talk about it to everybody that I meet, which is Musical Chairs by Amy Popel. It comes out July 21st, and it's just yummy and delicious and wonderful in I could not have loved it more. So actually my plan now is to read her two previous novels. I also, the other book I'm really looking forward to, which is about to come out, is J. Courtney Sullivan's new book, Friends and Strangers. Independent bookstores, my locals that I love are Barrett Bookstore in Darien, Connecticut, and also Elm Street Books in New Canaan. And I have to shout out Diane's Books in Greenwich as well. So those are my Connecticut locals.
Thank you so much. Thank you all for being here today. Thank you for being so generous with your thoughts and your time, and for writing your fabulous books. Thank you to all of you who have joined us. I hope you join us again at 2 for our Beach Reads Bingo panel. Ladies, thank you so much again. Jamie Brenner with Summer Longing, Kerry Kletter with East Coast Girls, Jane Green, The Friends We Keep, and 90% of books everywhere because she's written them all. Meg Mitchell-Moore, True Truths and a Lie. Ladies, thank you, thank you, thank you. You are all wonderful.